It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. President Muhammadu Buhari has pledged his commitment to hand over a diversified, homegrown economy and stable democracy to his successor. Mr. Buhari was speaking at a dinner in honor of the 2022 Committee of Business, Political, Media and Civil Society Leaders, reiterated his desire to leave a legacy for a united, peaceful and prosperous country. He added that he was looking forward to completing his tenure in 2023. This comes as the chairman of the This Day Arise media group, Prince Nduka Obagbena, said the nation was currently facing unrivaled transition towards the 2023 general polls.
We have everything that shouldn't be challenging us. Therefore, we also have people who say, or separatist movements around the place. Today, they say they want this type of president or that type of president. So we thought that this is the time to defend the national interest. And the 2022 committee is put together to do just that. Defend Nigeria at a time of crisis and at a time of transition.
Nigerians easily are the best educated people in the whole world. In the US, if you Google the most educated people, it will come up with just one word: Nigerians. We have no business being where we are today. Thirdly, Mr. President, sir, God has blessed us with the best of everything. Our crude oil is the best. It's only in Nigeria that you find ebony growing in the wild. We have Amazonia, we have teak, we have gold. If you scratch our surface, you find limestone, coal. God has blessed us with every natural resource. It's on account of this that I said we have no business being where we are today.
Whatever challenges our country is experiencing, it is also opportunity in adversity. It's an opportunity to continue to ensure that Nigeria remains united, indestructible, and indissoluble. But in order to do that, we also have to meet with the expectations of our people. So what this committee, at least in our initial meeting, has tried to do, sir, is develop an elite consensus on security, as has been said, on economy, with a view to building a stronger polity.
Each one of you can write a book on your way to where you are. I haven't seen anybody who got it easy here. The trip to where you are now hasn't been an enjoyable one. I know that from interacting with a number of you in the list I have. I will keep this list, I need it. This initiative you have taken is very good. I wish you had taken it much earlier. But in a few weeks' time, there will be a number of you sitting there who wanted to be here. I wish you the best of luck.
Your thoughts on the 2022 committee?
I thought you were going to go first.
Should I?
Oh, well, go ahead. Oh, you want me to start? Okay. I think the idea of the 2022 committee, which tries to forge a consensus among political leaders, business leaders, and the civil society is a good idea. And the point as made by the chairman of the This Day Arise group, Prince Nduka Obagbena, who is the convener of the group, I think it's about, according to him, about patriotism, about unity. At a time that the country is going through, to quote him, a transition like no other. This transition is not the same one as we had in 1999. In 1999, the transition from civilian rule, from the crisis of the 1993 elections to democratic rule, or some people say civilian democracy, the circumstances were different. A consensus was forged. A consensus was reached to ensure that the leader of Nigeria will come from the Southwest. The major beneficiary of that is President Olusegun Obasanjo. In 2003, yes, President Obasanjo continued in that position. In 2007, there was a consensus that power should go to the north. So you have a country that is having all kinds of, transitions. And it is sad that almost 23 years later, people are still referring to the Nigerian democratic project as a putative democracy. And that's why I agree with, Prince Obagbena and the people who are his associates in this particular project, that this is a transition like no other. A few months, less than 17 months, to the next transition, or if you like, 1 year to the transition. We don't even know where Nigeria is going. There's so much uncertainty in politics. There's so much uncertainty even in the economic arena, with inflation figures flying through the roof, with the economic managers of the economy, with all the big titles that they carry about and their shoulders in the air, not having an idea about where Nigeria should go. And you and I, no, you are not one of us.
Of course I am.
No, we ordinary people. I'm talking about ordinary people, not privileged people. With ordinary people having to bear the brunt, either in terms of supply of electricity or traffic gridlock that nobody can address expeditiously, or any kind of crisis that we face in this country. So the 2022 Committee of Business, Political, Media, and Civil Society leaders, they have a legitimate project in their hands. How do we build consensus? How do we move Nigeria forward? How do we defend, as Obagbena pointed out in his statement, the national interest at a time of critical transition? In 2015, there was some kind of emergent consensus about, Nigerians say, President Buhari will save us. He was given the garb of a Solomonic, successor, and Nigerians thought, this is the Messiah that will save us. 8 years after, Nigeria has not been saved. So I align myself with the attempt by a group of persons to come forward and say, look, we have to defend the national interest. The appropriate word that they should have used is the common good. Where is the state of the common good in Nigeria at this moment? And it's just as well that they had that ceremony with the president meeting with him. But there's a lot more. I hope they will come up with a lot more in terms of content, in terms of what they intend to do. Well, that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that maybe, we need to look at the composition of this committee of 2022 committee. I don't know why they have chosen 2022. Maybe 2023 will have been a more appropriate title. How inclusive is that group? Because all of us are stakeholders in this project of protecting the common good in Nigeria, which is the major thing that has been signposted by the 2023 democratic process. Now, let me go to the president's speech. The president, in responding to the 2022 committee, talked about legacy. That should not be surprising. I mean, at his age, with the opportunities that he has had in Nigeria, with the service that he has provided to Nigeria, he is in the right place to talk about legacy. And we've been talking about legacy. And he's saying that, he's determined to end on a strong note and to ensure that Nigerians will remember his administration very well. To the extent that his administration is now focusing on his legacy, I think that is an important task. And whoever wrote the speech that he delivered did a good job.
Very good
I
job.
can say that as someone who used to sign up for complete 4 years on presidential speeches in Nigeria. The buck on that one stopped at my desk. And then, of course, the president will eventually approve. I thought the speech was very well written. Yeah. But the president, some of the issues I would like to take him on about, it was his commentary on elite consensus in Nigeria. He was saying, he has been very critical of the elites in Nigeria because the elites in Nigeria tend to be more interested in monetary gain. He's right on that score. He says that the Nigerian elite tends to go into the ethnic cocoon. He's also right on that score. He says that the Nigerian elite is very partisan. He's very right on that score. But he cannot reach the conclusion that Nigerian elites have now come together and there is an elite consensus for national growth and progress on the basis of the 2022 committee. It seems to me that the Nigerian elite is the most rapacious elite that is available anywhere in the world. Okay? And I do not think that the character of the Nigerian elite has changed. But it is good that the 2022 committee is starting a conversation. And the conversation is as follows. Namely, that look, for you to change society, for you to make progress, you need a critical mass. Will the 2022 committee be able to put together that critical elite that will have a collaborative social enterprise that will move Nigeria forward? That is a question that I cannot answer. But I think that the 2022 committee starting the conversation is useful. And the 2022 committee should seek to expand its net and to have a robust conversation on the issues. Not necessarily about the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari, which I think is a legitimate thing to think about, but about how an enlightened elite can emerge in Nigeria. Because here in Nigeria, we don't have that enlightened elite class, which is what drives other societies. But for the conversation being initiated by the 2022 committee, I have no problems with that. And I hope at some point they will try to seek my own participation in that committee.
I imagine that they will. Now, why you continue to try and deny me publicly, I do not know. But we shall discuss.
Are you one of the ordinary people?
Of course I am.
Are you?
Of course I am. Now, to the 2022 committee, what is most striking for me is the dawning realization that we are approaching the edge of a precipice, and everybody has to get involved. That not so subtle dig that the president made at our Nigerian elite, as you said, you use rapacious, I will use grasping avarice, which is really just how I see it, which is why I am one of you, Dr. Abati.
Okay. Welcome to the club.
So the fact is that everybody must realize that all hands must be on deck. That, for me, is what is most cheering about this. Because every 4 years we hear in the cycle, this election is make or break and what have you. And it's one of those phrases that now has lost all meaning. Until now, it does have a lot of meaning now because it is make or break. 2023 will decide a lot of things. And I think that they resisted calling the committee 2023 so as not to make it political in nature. Okay. I think it's more of a societal change and our leaders actually rising up to lead good, which is why I was saying they had better come up with ideas. We need ideas. And also that idea of the man at the top, the Nigerian president with his monarchical powers, gets all the benefits, but also bears all of the burdens. And neither one is healthy in a democracy. It has to now be devolved to federating units, to the elite, the business elite, to the political elite, to all the elites across the board, to you, the intelligentsia, to everybody. Everybody must stake a claim in this country because at the rate it is going, we will not have a country. We are really approaching that kind of an emergency. So I feel like this is a recognition of that. As for the president's speech, I absolutely loved it. I loved the speech that he gave, I believe it was December, at that virtual summit with Joe Biden, talking about democracy. That was a good speech. But this built on that. That was good. This was great.
Well,
and this is what we needed to have been hearing consistently over the 7 years. Even the talk about trying to seek solace in the past, I thought that was a very important note that he struck. You know that I find that quite irritating. I think we need to be forward-facing at this point. That was an excellent speech.
Yeah.
I look forward to more of this for the next 16 months.
Yeah, no, they've improved since
Yes.
the new chief of staff, Professor Gambari, took over.
Yes.
They've been writing good speeches.
I mean, the difference is striking.
I have an idea. It used to be my work. Okay, let's move on, Tundu.
That's all on the news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rosa Sadiri, Michael Wilson, Adeswa Omoran, and Aaron Akirjala to give us updates on Africa and global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rosa Sadiri is here to give us an African business update.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Kick off with the Central Bank of Nigeria. Yesterday in Abuja, they launched the maiden edition of the 100 for 100 policy for production and productivity (PPP). Central Bank Governor Gordon Emefiele, of course, revealed about 23 billion naira was disbursed to 28 firms. Now, I mean, I think this started off with a whole lot of applicants that was whittled down to just 28. I believe 14 of those 28 are in manufacturing. Another 12 are in, I believe it's trade, and then 2 in healthcare. So these were essentially companies that are, and he stressed that these are loans. This 23 billion are loans to these companies that are essentially part of the central bank's import substitution and job creation policies. So he also, as by the way, mentioned that there's going to be a new FX bidding regime. Didn't give too many details on the new FX bidding regime, but he did say that it's going to prioritize companies that essentially have whose operations are going to reduce imports. So, but if the operations are going to reduce imports, reduce the burden on the import bill, they will get they'll be prioritized for foreign exchange. So, if you look at overall here, job creation, productivity, import substitution, relying less on FX for imports. That's what the central bank is aiming for. And again, this is the first phase of this 100 for 100 program. Is going to continue rolling. Even the companies that didn't make it for the first stage, the central bank said that they're going to look at why they didn't, where they missed out on being able to get access to these funds, and that they'll find out what it is, and then probably revisit them and see what happened there. But again, this is something that he announced. Remember, this was announced back in October of 2021 when I think even Independence Day, when no, that wasn't Independence Day, it was after Independence Day, but it was when the e-Naira was launched. So, this is moving along. It is going to be very, very conducive for companies that are involved. Again, job creation, import substitution, that again is the central bank's 100 for 100 scheme. We move to power. Apparently the Siemens deal is still on. And, well, Zainab Ahmed was at the Siemens deal phase 1 is under the Presidential Power Initiative, which is supposed to deliver about 25,000 megawatts. And this announcement by Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, was made at a training program for engineers under this deal. This training program is supposed to give these engineers the tools that they need to apply themselves to the value chain, the power value chain, to get us the megawatts that we need. So she also said about 40 million Nigerians will get access to power. The megawatts will be ramped up. But I have to say, this is the first update we're getting on the Siemens deal since Chimamanda Adichie pointedly asked Angela Merkel, who's heading out of office in Germany, what the update was. And Angela Merkel said she didn't know, and she was going to ask Siemens. And another thing that has to be said, this deal was signed in 2019. At that time, when the 3 phases were introduced, we were supposed to get to 7,000 megawatts by the end of 2021. And nothing's happened since then. And now, I mean, look, for people who are dealing with estimated billing, for people who are dealing with a lack of access to meters, For people whose businesses, who 40 to 50% of their overheads are going to power. Seeing the government announce a training program, you have to ask, the impact of that, where that takes you. This has been, unfortunately, it's been delayed. It's good to hear that it's still on, and it's good to hear that there will be a lot of announcements, which will what the impact will be. But we literally have to feel it. We have to see it to measure its progress. And with less than a year to go until the elections, I don't know. Anyway, to retail, ShopRite's, which of course has new ownership, has announced that they will reopen the Jakande site, which was in along the Lekki axis that was vandalized during the NSARS protests. So that's been undergoing rehabilitation. That's the Circle Mall on the Lekki axis. So they're reopening. Unfortunately, they also said that they're going to be closing down the Maryland location. Now, they didn't really give much details as to why they're closing it down. They just said, unfortunately, they had to make a difficult decision to close it down. They are looking at opening other locations, and I've been to the Maryland Mall. It's these things. I guess it's a little smaller. It's smaller than the other locations if you compare it to the one at Surulere or the one at the Palms Mall in Lekki. Much smaller. So I guess foot traffic is a lot. Foot traffic is smaller, and you need volumes to drive these things. So maybe that's why. But it's on the first floor when you get to Maryland Mall. It's the first thing you see. It's a shame that that's being closed down because there are other retail attractions where it's located. But good on them to see the Jakande site open up. Finally, Kenya. Take a look at this inflation table. Kenya's look at inflation. Inflation for January 2022 was just released. You look at the top, January 21. This again is Kenya. January 2021, 5.69. At the bottom, January 2022, 5.39. So Kenya's inflation rate is at a 12-month low. Something quickly to be said about this is because of fuel prices and food. If you pay for fuel in Kenya, there's a levy, there's a tax. Same thing in Ghana, same thing in South Africa, due to market forces. Now, there's an election coming up. Uhuru Kenyatta announced that electricity costs will be cut and also fuel. The levy, the tax that Kenya charges on purchasing fuel goes into a pool. And what they did is they subsidized fuel in December and January. By subsidizing fuel, they essentially did what we've been doing for decades now. They kept the costs of fuel down, and by not allowing fuel prices to rise, that moderated inflation in Kenya. So the thing is, when you think about people here, the working class, the labor unions, folks who are against a levy, you can see how it is used. The money that they've collected from the levy is what was now used to moderate the price of fuel, to keep it from, because you've seen where oil prices are at $90 now. So anyway, part of the subsidy argument, we can learn lessons from there. That's our update.
We certainly can. Thank you for that Kenyan parallel. With regards to ShopRite, I mean, you recall when the NSARS protest got hijacked and Circle Mall was attacked by hoodlums.
Viciously.
It was so awful. So for me, this is one of those stories. A lot of people, and you recall as well, when ShopRite announced that they're departing from Nigeria, there was some kind of mild panic.
Right.
And all we of little faith, there's a happy ending here. Well, unfortunately, you have the Maryland closure, but I want to see it as when a window closes, a door opens, or whatever. Right. I'm determined to be optimistic about this. I'm absolutely determined because of the service that ShopRite provides across the country, the farmers, the small businesses, the suppliers that they support, and obviously the retail sector in Nigeria. We really need to boost that as well, which leads me to your next story. Retail sector, I think, is less than a fifth of our GDP,
correct.
So we need to boost that. So your next story about the CBN PPP is also a really great story. And I'm also curious as well. Those companies, the 28 companies that made the selection criteria, which was detailed, because I checked. I was scrolling wondering, well, what is the selection criteria?
Right.
And it was detailed. They're very thorough. So they must have done a great job. So there were 79 in total who applied. I guess better luck next time. So you know now the standard that's expected of you. That also is a really good initiative. And I think that's just been a consistent thrust of this CBN, just trying to minimize our import dependency. And we are addicted to imported products. They're throwing everything at this problem. I support this. And I thought it would just be, exclusively the manufacturing sector. But no, healthcare, agriculture gets a look in. Right. So that's also really important as well. Indeed. So great stories this morning, Moses. Thank you. Siemens.
Okay, in terms of principle, the idea, I think that the intervention of the Central Bank of Nigeria is useful. what they want to do. They want to encourage investments. They want to, the CBN wants to strengthen the manufacturing sector, the healthcare sector, and create opportunities within the economy. But what we can ask for, this 23 billion to 28 companies.
Which are loans.
Yeah.
Which are loans.
Yes.
So we have to insist on two things. That there will be the mechanism in place, to ensure that these loans are repaid. Yeah. And that two, there is transparency and accountability. And that three, going forward, you say you've seen the list and all that, but we also need to be sure with regard to the credibility of the process that there's no cronyism.
Right.
That this is not being used as a political weapon to favor certain persons or certain groups or certain interest groups. Because the way Nigeria operates, even the CBN itself, is not insulated from the politics of Nigeria. And then four is the fact that the Central Bank of Nigeria seems to be overburdened. This is a central bank that is not just dealing with monetary policy,
right,
but it's involved in everything.
Right.
The Central Bank of Nigeria today is like an alternate government.
Right.
Maybe because you have in place a Godwin Emefiele, he's very enthusiastic and wants to do things. When I was in government, there was something we called the vacuum theory. So if you leave a vacuum, other people will, they will occupy.
Yeah. Nature was
so
a vacuum.
All we were always trying to do then is you have to hold down your own space. We have a fiscal policy segment of government that is absent. And so you find the monetary policy side of it doing more than it can do. So how much more can Godwin Emefiele's central bank chew? And at what point is, the main side, meet with the monetary side and then be more productive? Even agriculture. The CBN of Nigeria now is doing more for agriculture than the Ministry of Agriculture, where they don't even have a proper register of farmers in Nigeria.
Right.
Okay, so when we have some of these things from the CBN, yes, good ideas. Maybe they have some educated persons in high places, but they can't do everything. Other departments of government just have to wake up. Now, Kenya, you are recommending Kenya as a good example.
Inflation, yeah.
Yeah, with regard to inflation. But the truth of the matter is that if you look at the consumer price index in Kenya, 7% lending rate announced by Dr. Patrick Njoroge a few days ago, but they have problems. The ordinary people in Kenya are suffering.
True.
There is high unemployment rate. The shillings, that's their currency, is heavily depreciated against the dollar,
yeah,
creating very serious issues in that economy. Even this inflation rate that you are talking about, that you say has slowed down within 12 months, is very unstable.
True.
Kenya is running a deficit budget.
That's true.
So what you have in Kenya is the same problem that we have here, across African countries.
True. But doctor, will you not take 5%?
Inattentive leadership.
We can only wish.
Versus 15%.
Do you get it?
Yes, of course.
So it's not as if Kenya is such a fantastic example that Nigeria should emulate. There's also slow economic growth in Kenya. So they have their own issues.
Yep.
We have our own issues here. Prices of commodities have gone up. People cannot even buy basic necessities or commodities in Kenya. So it's not as if Kenya is some kind of example that we need to celebrate. The leadership in Kenya, we need to focus on basic monetary policy and fiscal policy issues. True. So I don't think Kenya is so fantastic. We may have our problems here, but I don't see what magic in Njoroge and the people in Kenya are doing that is better than what we are doing here.
We're out of time. I've responded to Doc, but I know we're out of time. But talk points, doctor.
No, respond. I'm waiting.
No, it would be too long to go into the Kenya, the manufacturers. But yeah, tomorrow. But excellent point, doctor. Thank you so much, Studio. Thank you.
Moving on to more business updates. Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's have a look at the Asian markets first of all, and sort of China, Hong Kong, South Korea, and also Singapore closed for the Lunar New Year holiday. So the basic thing is that the market's up slightly on top of Wall Street, which I'll come on to. The Reserve Bank of Australia now bucked the trend actually of central banks and did not increase interest rates there, although it has ended its bond buying program. That was quite well predicted. Australia's ASX 200 jumped by almost 1% on the back of that, but not a lot of action basically given the holidays there. Now here's a good one. Sony buys the video game maker Bungie for $3.6 billion. You'll be wondering about why that's important. Well, it is because it shows consolidation in that particular sector. You'll remember that 2 weeks ago, Xbox maker Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard for $75 billion. That was its biggest deal. It's that company's biggest deal ever. And it shows how that gaming space is actually due for consolidation and also expansion too. China has been talking, even though we're talking holidays there, it's been pointing towards areas to try out blockchain. I'll come on to what that is just in case you don't know. But Beijing and Shanghai amongst cities designated by it. What it is, blockchain allows you to, as it were, create a virtual ledger so that you know exactly who's paid what to whom. That's the absolute bottom line of it. And that's why authorities are actually quite interested in that. As far as global things are concerned, yes, it still continues. Russian build-up of troops outside Ukraine and so on. But there was a big video meeting yesterday and a virtual meeting, and Ukraine's called for a peaceful solution to that. I have to say, though, that there was no particular agreement about that meeting, and it looks like the language is pretty sharp. The Russian ambassador blamed the United States for, as he put it, provoking escalation at the border and for falsely accusing Moscow of preparing to invade Ukraine. I wonder what all those troops on the border mean. But anyway, let's leave that to the diplomats. Let's look at the United States. A quick recap there. A terrible month for equities, basically. It was as if some kind of optimism was waiting around, and here it happened towards the end of the month, because we're now, of course, in February. Last week, the Fed indicated that the likely start for interest rate rises would be March, betting on how many that may be. Is it 4? Is it 5, perhaps, this year? Quarter percent increases. That would take it up quite high. Here's something. If ever you see anybody on public transport pretending to work and they're really doing the crossword, which I love crosswords. The New York Times has bought Wordle, which is the new game. I'm not quite sure it has quite the sort of intellectual appeal of crosswords, but what it is it's the game challenges players to find a 5-letter word in 6 guesses. Is that difficult? I don't know. I've not played it yet. But anyway, I thought it was worth bringing to your attention. As far as bigger business is concerned in the United States, Boeing has secured an order for 737 MAX planes from Qatar Airways, which is actually quite important. The deal comes after Airbus said it cancelled Qatar's order for 50 A321s. Now, the UK investigation into Downing Street has basically put Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister in London, and the UK on probation. Very, very lively discussions in the House of Commons yesterday, but now we're waiting for the official reports, and it will be slightly delayed. The Metropolitan Police are involved, as is senior servant Sue Gray. We'll wait till that report actually happens before that happens. As far as the sanctions are concerned in Russia, the UK has been challenged to clamp down on what is described as dirty money. They call it London, Stan. London is a sort of what has been described as a laundromat for earnings from illicit operations. You'll know about these accusations. They've been going on for years. Whilst the Russians are awaiting sanctions should they decide to invade Ukraine, the city of London is being challenged to do that. A global chip shortage. Let's look at Jaguar Land Rover. It's lost £9 million so far because of the global chip shortage, and obviously it's seeing no solution to that. Again, we have to wait. Somebody was saying the other day it might take 2 years for this to happen, the global chip shortage to be actually resolved. And finally, oil. Well, oil and gold. Actually, let's do The crude oil price, unsurprisingly, rising again. It looks like that $100 a barrel thing is coming closer, although OPEC Plus still has to talk about it. They meet tomorrow, I think, and so we'll be waiting to hear from them when they'll up production or whether they're happy to ride a higher oil price. Who knows? As far as gold's concerned, well, it's a hostage really to how hawkish the Fed's going to be. If the Fed's hawkish, the dollar rises, therefore gold falls, and vice versa. And that is your global view this morning.
Okay, Michael, well, I know you don't like to talk politics, but you are going to drag me in that direction yourself because you went on the major topic in the UK this morning, which is the Successor report. 500 pages of evidence, 300, images after 70 witnesses. And the Successor team provided us with just 12 pages, telling us about the failure of leadership and unacceptable conduct in different cases. But do you think that that report is really partial? Because Successor seems to have moved the needle in the direction of the Metropolitan Police, still looking into 12 cases. Is that a reprieve for the Prime Minister? And for how much longer can the Prime Minister hold out? That's with regard to the Successor report. Second, New York Times has bought Watley. I hope the pronunciation is correct. Now, we've been talking about newspapers, the coming death of the newspaper. I gave a lecture a few years back in which I quoted a gentleman who said that the newspaper, as an industry, is likely to die by 2023. It's almost here. So what is the value of this? Newspapers are diverting away from the reporting of news. They are engaging in games, word puzzle, games for children. Do we have a problem, truly, with the newspaper industry? And is the newspaper likely to die, as predicted, in the age of convergence, in the age of digitalization? And third, if we have time, Toyota, in one case, has had to apologize and pay compensation to the family of a staff who committed suicide due to, we're told, overwork, or what is called in Japan, karoshi. Is there something like overwork? Can workers work too much for the companies that engage them?
Okay, as far as the political situation here is concerned, I watched the majority of the exchanges, and all Boris Johnson said to anything that was thrown at him in the in the House of Commons yesterday was, "You wait till we see the report." Actually, what he did say, and I thought it was quite important, is that yes, all this is going on in Westminster. I think there's a feeling in the country that politicians aren't to be trusted. Well, join the club as far as that's concerned. I think that what he was trying to point to is the efforts that the UK is making to try and bring about a peaceful solution to what's happening in the world. You yourself said yesterday that this government is trying to make the UK more competitive. Now it's out of the EU. All these are much bigger issues. The problem is, I do get the feeling that it was like watching an old rhino being attacked by little darts all the time, and it was sort of thrusting them off and saying, "Look, you've got to wait until we actually do this." Nobody actually. This is the metaphor. Nobody actually landed any significant punches on the Prime Minister yesterday. Now, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's politics. You know my views about politics. I much prefer to follow the markets, because even though they're in a constant state of speculation, at least movements don't lie. So I feel as though what the MPs of his own party, the opposition, were nowhere yesterday. Basically, it was interesting to see what the dissenting members of his own party were doing. More and more of them saying, "We don't trust you anymore." That's number one. But secondly, what he was doing is he was placed, as we would put it, on probation. In other words, let's see what these two reports say. Yes, there is a problem with Sue Gray's report and the Metropolitan Police report at the same time, which is going to have further impacts and all the rest. this will run and run. But the fact of the matter is that I got the impression yesterday that a lot of MPs were talking within the Westminster bubble and not really concerning themselves with the serious things that are happening outside Westminster. And that's what Johnson was trying to turn their attention to as he wriggled under these little darts coming in. But yesterday, nobody managed to land any serious blows. We'll wait for that report to come out. As far as the New York Times is concerned and the future of newspapers, I agree with all that. We may not be standing in our crowded bus or on our public transport, or maybe sitting at home with a piece of paper. However, the value of proper news will never go away. It doesn't matter what it's transmitted on, whether it's transmitted on paper, whether it's transmitted through digital screens. And I have constantly said in our conversations over the years, there's a lot of noise and not a lot of news. And really, it's a question of sorting the one out from the other. It's about expertise in dealing with facts. What are facts? What is fake news? Who is influencing fake news? And as we see, as digitalization grows, it doesn't actually take away the importance of the newspaper or the news. What it does is it puts further pressure on the news to be correct, to have to weigh up all these different kinds of noises. And that takes a particular skill, and that's what journalists are supposed to do.
I ask you a question about Karoshi in Japan, Workaholic Japan, and the specific case in which Toyota has paid compensation and apologized. Is that going to lead to any new trend? And is working too much for a company that pays your wages an offense or a problem?
If you go to downtown Tokyo any night and you see exhausted businessmen drunk because they're under pressure all day, you'd certainly agree with that they do work them too hard. It's always been part of a work ethic in the same way it is in Germany. It becomes so much part of a societal change that when they leave, the Japanese call them autumn leaves, i.e. things to sweep away from your doorstep because they're of no use anymore. That is the problem in Japan. And that is something which is not going to go away. It's how they are. They work them very, very hard indeed. I happen to think that that's a bad idea. I think that work-life balance is very important indeed. And it isn't fashionable maybe to talk about these kind of things. I think it is possible to work people too hard. But after a certain kind of work, you don't get the sort of results that you have because the brain gets tired, of course. But it's what the Japanese do. They have a work ethic attached to their company in the same way that Germany has, in the same way that Italy and Spain and France don't. There is a terrible phrase which I cannot repeat on this program, but it's something like "can't be bothered," and that really is the impression that you get in Italy, Spain, and France when you try to get something done when they've all gone home or they're all at lunch.
Well, I have a pretty good idea what that phrase is, Mr. Wilson. Thank you. Thank you for your time. For an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Adesua Omorua is here with us. Good morning, Adesua.
Good morning, Tundun. Good morning, Dr. Abati. Great to be here. Well, it's 3 days until the Winter Games begin in China. I can tell you a lot of eyes are shifting attention to China as the country is playing down the Lunar New Year, the year of the tiger. What seems to be roaring in China at the moment is an increase in Delta and Omicron variant. For a third year in a row, that celebration has been toned down. It's fighting outbreaks in about 20 provinces and 50 cities, including the capital, Beijing. Meanwhile, in Canada, truckers are adamant. They say they're not backing down, even as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who announced he's now positive for COVID-19, denounced the protests. Well, the Johns Hopkins University tally this morning says there are now 378 million infections globally since the pandemic began, 5.67 million deaths recorded so far, and almost 10 billion vaccine doses have been administered across the world. Let's look at the data here in Nigeria. We saw about a 5-fold increase of infections in the last 24 hours. 158 cases and 1 COVID-19 related death were reported in Nigeria from 10 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, compared to the 22 cases and no deaths we saw the previous day. Well, the latest data from the vaccination agency shows that 14.9 million targeted eligible Nigerians have now been partially vaccinated, receiving 1 dose of the available vaccines, while 5.4 million, or 4.9% of that targeted population, have now been fully vaccinated, taking 2 doses of the vaccine. Nigeria is also rolling out the booster shots. Nothing overly critical of Boris Johnson himself, as Michael Wilson just said moments ago, but the long-awaited inquiry into the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and what has now become the Partygate, known as the Partygate, has found serious failure in leadership and judgment. It says some of the gatherings during the COVID-19 lockdown should not have happened in the first place. The Sugre report talks about high standards not being met by those setting the rules, or excessive alcohol consumption in the workplace, and gatherings without clear authorization or oversight. The Prime Minister promises to overhaul Downing Street and clean up government, but no talks of stepping down. He says he's sorry, he will fix it. But I think a familiar voice within his party summarized that report very aptly. Former Prime Minister Theresa May, who says Boris Johnson either did not read the COVID rules, or did not understand them, or thought he was exempt. Away from that, England actually is reviewing vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. A deadline had been set for 1st of April for unvaccinated workers to be fired, but the health secretary yesterday in Parliament said he's now reviewing that for many reasons. In other stories, the World Health Organization has finally launched an investigation into a top official after staffers accused him of racist, abusive, and unethical behaviors that was affecting the organization's ability to combat COVID-19 pandemic. His name is Takisha Kasai. He's the WHO's Western Pacific Regional Director. 37 countries are under his leadership, including his home country, Japan. Well, he was accused of creating a toxic culture with systemic bullying and public ridiculing. I said finally because the first time these allegations were made were in October last year, and they were made again in January, but the WHO has now stepped in. And finally, to Formula One, well, the sport is to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for all personnel this year. The move will mean no one will be able to work within the paddock, which is the inner sanctum of the sport, where the teams operate, and if you're not fully vaccinated, you won't be there. Well, the policy will apply to personnel working within Formula One, including drivers, teams, media, hospitality workers, and guests who attend the races. Let me also tell you that the FDA, the U.S. Food Drug Administration, has granted full approval to the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. It becomes the second COVID vaccine to receive such in the United States. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Adis. Well, it appears that Japanese work culture is becoming a theme this morning. I'm surprised that Dr. Takeshi has not done what we've come to expect of the Japanese and fallen on his sword and resigned. Because, like you've said, there's not just one accusation against him. I'm surprised he stopped at just a mere denial and didn't go the whole way. It does look like he might end up on his way out if that investigation finds that he's culpable in any way. With regards to Formula One, I guess everybody has learned that lesson from the Australian Open. I mean, all's well that ends well. It ended on a really positive note with Ash Barty winning for her country and Nadal smashing the record and now has 21 Grand Slams, which is a big deal. But we cannot forget the entire fiasco around Novak Djokovic and just how tawdry the whole scene was. And it's going to really affect Djokovic's career as he tries to equal Nadal. Like I've said on this segment several times, the attitude towards people has changed. It used to be vaccine hesitancy, which is quite a polite phrase. Now it's unvaccinated, like the unwashed. That kid gloves treatment is over. The gloves are coming off and people are being, forced to comply. Which leads me to Joe Rogan. To his credit, he has not tried to defend the indefensible. To his credit, he has said that he will try and present a more balanced view of the COVID debate. But it just goes to show, again, this attitude to COVID-19. Joe Rogan has a really fun podcast, a very interesting intellectual podcasts, and he also manages to make it fun. The two are not mutually exclusive, I must stress. But he has quite a controversial take on even like psychedelic drugs and what have you. And there's never been a clampdown about that. The clampdown is about COVID-19. And it goes to show the seriousness of this pandemic. The fact that people have died, lives have been damaged. I don't want to say ruined, because I don't think anything can ruin anybody's life, but lives have been damaged. And really, it's not acceptable to make light of it. It's not acceptable to peddle pseudoscience for any reason. And that is just really the bottom line here. And that's the issue that Boris Johnson is facing with what he has done. And the reports of so many parties coming out, is that all they did? Quite frankly, I'm wondering. And now there's a new report of a new party, unreported party, that was held to celebrate the exit or the sacking of Dominic Cummings, an ABBA party. And apparently Boris Johnson's wife was reportedly playing Winner Takes It All, which is a hit from ABBA, and just really indulging in Schadenfreude, which I think is awful at the best of times. But certainly not during a lockdown, having like a booze up. And there's talk of having alcohol be banned in Downing Street, which would be so embarrassing, because Downing Street is just not the workplace of the British Prime Minister. It's also their home. So for you to be told that you cannot drink because you've been so naughty is like dealing with like a recalcitrant child, putting a child in a naughty corner. You have no self-control. You have to be told what to do. The whole thing is humiliating. But yes, as everybody I think has observed, Boris Johnson remains really lucky. He was famously referred to as a greased piglet by the former David Cameron, that he gets away with anything, can wriggle out of any situation. And it appears that that luck is holding out. Keir Starmer didn't really manage to land any fatal blows, called him shameless, and asked that he resign, but that's really not going to happen. Theresa May had her pop, but I don't even think she was particularly vicious about it either. But it's just really, I think the public are the ones that will decide his fate, because right now his party is upset with him, but there's no clear leader. But the public will decide, because again, we're talking about COVID-19. You'll recall there was a case of Sarah Everard, a young woman walking home from visiting a friend who was arrested by a police officer, and he took her in on COVID laws. Yes. That is how stringently they were enforced. And it turned out that he was driving her away to rape and murder her. And somebody like Sarah Everard maintained the COVID rules and respected the COVID rules to the point where it cost her life. And Boris Johnson and his little coterie of associates and colleagues and what have you are getting drunk in Downing Street and eating cake. It's really kind of smacks of the French Revolution. And I think there will be a price that he will pay. Maybe not now, but down the line.
Okay, quickly, let's start from the United Kingdom. The Sue Gray report is a limited report, investigating about 16 cases between 2020 and 2021. And now what the report says, and that's why it is limited, is that 12 of those 16 cases are still being investigated by the Metropolitan Police. So to that extent, this particular report, as I said earlier, grants the Prime Minister a reprieve. It's like postponing the evil day, to use a familiar phrase, to say that until the Metropolitan Police concludes its investigations, then, of course, no conclusions can be reached. Would Boris Johnson be able to protect himself, save himself, deploying Operation Red Meat and some of the steps that have been taken recently? That remains to be seen. The Prime Minister, in front of the House of Commons yesterday, says, I get it, I will fix it. Does he get it? Does he really get it? Because the biggest challenge that the Johnson administration in the UK faces at the moment is a problem of trust. And that is why he's under pressure to resign. Where will he resign? So the matter has not been concluded yet, and there are many in the British community that are saying that they are awaiting the final report and what conclusions Sue Gray will arrive at. But whatever it is, the conclusion is clear in terms of the criticism. The report, the 12-page report, is saying there's failure of leadership. There's failure of judgment. And that many of the things that happened within the context of the investigation should never have happened. So what the British face at the moment is a Prime Minister who is suffering or who is dealing with challenges of integrity, of trust, of credibility. And these are very serious issues. But it remains to be seen how these will be resolved. And how soon the Metropolitan Police will conclude their investigations and the effect that will have on the administration. As for Formula One, yes, all drivers, everybody involved, teams and all of that, what Formula One is trying to do is simply to avoid the crisis that occurred in Australia. Formula One is saying that vaccination is mandatory, not just vaccination, double vaccination, and that there will be no exemptions, whoever it may be. The next Formula One tournament in the 23-round season will begin in Bahrain on the 20th of March. And what they have done, what the FIA, which is the governing body, has done, is to roll out the rules and say, this is how we will proceed. But there is also the other issue, the other unresolved issue of the position of the sporting director and how the supercar is managed, which is something that Formula One has been looking at after other controversy between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Now, as for Joe Rogan, yes, it's good that he has come forward to say that, well, he will try to balance his views. But does Spotify, does it have the mechanism in place beyond restating the rules to make sure that this money machine for Spotify, bought with $100 million, does not repeat the offense? But what Spotify has done that you can hold on to is that they now have a disclaimer that they will put on every podcast to say that the views do not necessarily belong to them. But Joe Rogan coming forward to say where there will be a difference is for us to watch and to see whether he truly means what he says with his apology. As for WHO and the Western Pacific boss, well, these are institutional issues. If a man is accused of racism, abusive behavior, it should be investigated. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he's guilty, because in every institution, there's also politics. So it's not for us to engage in media trial by media. But it is good enough that the WHO is saying that the allegations that have been raised by many of the staffers will be investigated, and will be interested in the outcome of the investigation, and we hope that this will be made public in the interest of all parties concerned. Thank you very much, Adeswa.